Beneath the familiar ground we walk on lie entire cities, forgotten and waiting. These are not simple caves, but complex underground networks built by vanished civilizations to survive existential threats. We are about to explore 23 of these hidden structures, from sprawling subterranean metropolises to secret wartime tunnels. By the end of this journey, you will understand the ingenious survival strategies that allowed entire populations to endure against impossible odds. What secrets did ancient engineers bury to outlast wars and climate disasters? And what can their forgotten blueprints teach us about our own resilience today? What does it truly take for a society to hide from the world in order to save itself? Deep beneath the rolling hills of Cappadocia, an entire world was carved by hand from soft volcanic rock. This is the Derinkuyu underground city, a multi-level marvel that could shelter up to 20,000 people for months at a time. Think of the sheer scale, a labyrinth descending over 280 feet into the earth, with 18 distinct levels discovered so far. It was far more than a simple hiding place. It was a fully functioning city in its own right. Families lived in complex networks of rooms, their animals were kept in secure stables, and communities gathered for worship in dedicated chapels, all hidden from the world above. The true genius of Derinkuyu, however, lies in its life support systems. Ingenious ventilation shafts, some over 100 feet long, brought fresh air to even the deepest chambers. Carefully engineered wells tapped into underground water sources, ensuring a constant supply. And for ultimate security, massive, circular stone doors, each weighing several hundred pounds, could be rolled across critical passageways, sealing entire sections from invaders. This was a society that planned for every contingency, from food storage to spiritual needs, creating a complete blueprint for survival. How did they achieve such a feat without modern tools? The answer is written in the very rock itself. The volcanic tuff of Cappadocia is soft enough to carve with simple hand tools, yet strong enough to support vast underground structures. It was a perfect canvas for a people who knew they needed to disappear. For centuries, early Christians used this subterranean fortress to escape waves of persecution, their entire culture preserved in the cool, dark silence below. The city stands as a breathtaking testament to human ingenuity, a place where an entire civilization chose to go deep into the earth in order to ensure its own future. While the rock-cut cities of Cappadocia offered refuge, another civilization found its sanctuary deep within the earth for a very different reason. In southern Poland, a descent into the Wieliczka salt mine reveals a world carved not just for survival, but for the soul. For over 7 centuries, miners did not merely extract salt, they sculpted an underground kingdom from it. This was an economic engine, yes, producing the white gold that funded empires, but it was also a profound spiritual sanctuary. The very walls that held unimaginable wealth were transformed into spaces of worship and community. Entire chapels with altars, statues, and intricate reliefs depicting biblical scenes were painstakingly chiseled from the salt rock itself. The most breathtaking of these is St. Kinga's Chapel, a cavernous underground cathedral where every element from the chandeliers to the floor tiles is made of salt. Here, after long and dangerous shifts, miners would gather not just to pray for safety, but to reinforce the social bonds that held their community together. This dual purpose was the mine's true genius. Its deep, stable tunnels provided a constant temperature and humidity, offering physical shelter during invasions and political unrest above. At the same time, the act of creating beauty in the darkness, of building a sacred space alongside an industrial one, provided the moral and psychological shelter needed to endure. It highlights a crucial survival strategy often overlooked, that resilience depends as much on cultural continuity and spiritual fortitude as it does on material resources like food and water. The mine was a complete system, sustaining both the body and the human spirit through times of upheaval. This seamless integration of the practical and the sacred set a powerful precedent, one we see again in a hidden city built not from salt or rock, but from pure military necessity. But sometimes survival requires more than just hiding. It demands the ability to strike back. The earth beneath the Cu Khai district in Vietnam conceals a network so narrow and claustrophobic it feels like a tomb, yet it became a decisive weapon. This was not a city of refuge but a fortress of resistance, a labyrinth stretching over 120 miles that housed entire communities of guerrilla fighters. Soldiers did not just hide here, they lived, planned, and fought from within the soil. The tunnels contained everything from field hospitals and kitchens to command centers and sleeping quarters, all completely invisible to the aircraft and soldiers scouring the landscape above. The true genius of Cu Khai was its transformation of the underground into an active combat zone. Entrances were hidden beneath termite mounds and trapdoors covered with leaves. Deadly bamboo spike traps, known as punji sticks, were concealed in pits, turning the ground itself into a lethal adversary for any invader. Ventilation shafts were cleverly disguised as termite mounds, allowing air to circulate without betraying their location. To live in such conditions for years required more than just physical endurance. It demanded immense psychological strength. How did they maintain morale in the perpetual darkness, surrounded by insects, disease, and the constant threat of discovery? The answer lies in a culture of rigorous training and an unshakable belief in their cause. New recruits were taught to navigate the tightest passages, to control their breathing and coughs, and to live with minimal resources. This mental fortitude was their ultimate survival tool, as critical as the tunnels themselves. The Cu Khai network stands as a powerful example of how a hidden space can become an offensive weapon, a place where a society's will to resist was forged in the deepest darkness. This strategy of using concealment not just for protection but for persistence would be taken to an even grander scale by a civilization that built not just tunnels, but an entire subterranean metropolis. While the tunnels of Vietnam were a weapon of war, the hidden labyrinths beneath the Italian city of Orvieto served a more fundamental purpose, controlling the very source of life itself. High on a cliff of volcanic rock, the ancient Etruscans faced a constant threat, not just from invading armies but from the sky above and the earth below. Their survival depended on a single, precious resource, water, and so they built down not to hide people, but to capture and secure every drop. They carved a staggering network of cisterns, wells, and tunnels directly into the soft tufa stone, creating a hidden circulatory system for their entire city. The true brilliance of their engineering lies in its precision. These were not just simple holes in the ground. They were complex structures designed to collect rainwater from the city's piazzas and rooftops, channeling it through a series of filters into vast, bell-shaped cisterns that could hold enough to sustain the population for months. Even more impressive, they learned to tap directly into the natural aquifers deep within the rock, creating a water supply completely independent of vulnerable rivers or springs on the surface. This was their ultimate defense against siege and drought, a secret weapon of pure sustainability. But the underground world of Orvieto was more than just a water bank. These same tunnels, later expanded in the Middle Ages, became multi-purpose survival hubs. Chambers were dedicated to pressing olives for oil, a crucial source of calories and light. Other niches were used for breeding pigeons, providing a ready source of fresh meat and fertilizer, all safe within the city's fortified heart. How did they achieve such sophisticated hydraulic engineering without any modern technology? The answer was a culture built on communal labor and inherited knowledge. Skills for carving, sealing, and maintaining the cisterns were passed from one generation to the next, becoming a sacred trust. The entire city's survival was a collective project, a shared secret written in stone. This profound focus on securing a fundamental resource underground reveals a universal truth in survival strategy, that the most powerful fortresses are those that protect not just the people, but the means of their continued existence. This mastery of a hidden water supply finds a strange and powerful echo in a much later, and far more desperate, project born from the fear of total annihilation. The fear of total annihilation that drove ancient civilizations to carve out water cisterns found its ultimate expression in the 20th century, deep beneath the bustling streets of Beijing. Here lies Dixia Cheng, the underground city, a colossal labyrinth conceived at the height of the Cold War. This was not a refuge from invaders with swords, but a planned sanctuary for up to 1 million people against a threat from the skies, nuclear attack. For years, a massive civilian workforce, including countless volunteers, toiled in secret to construct a subterranean world that mirrored the city above. They built not just tunnels, but a fully equipped parallel society, complete with hospitals ready for mass casualties, schools to continue education, and even factories to maintain wartime production, all shielded by thick layers of earth and concrete. The complex featured its own streets, shops stocked with supplies, and communal spaces like cinemas and cafeterias, all designed to sustain not just life, but a semblance of normalcy during what would have been the ultimate crisis. This monumental effort was a direct product of its time, a physical manifestation of the geopolitical tensions that held the world in a balance of terror. Nations poured immense resources into civil defense, and Dixia Cheng stood as one of its most ambitious monuments. Yet, this vast city was never used for its intended, terrifying purpose. Its tunnels now sit largely silent and forgotten, a relic of a fear that once gripped the planet. What can we learn from such a grandiose yet unused shelter? Its very existence speaks volumes about the human drive to protect a way of life, even against seemingly insurmountable odds. It reminds us that preparedness, even if never tested, becomes woven into the fabric of national identity and community resilience, a quiet promise of continuity in the face of the unthinkable. This modern example of underground planning, born from atomic age anxieties, directly connects the survival strategies of ancient Orvieto to our own contemporary concerns. And it paves the way for even older sites, where the line between practical refuge and mystical belief becomes beautifully blurred. A world away from the atomic age bunkers, on the sun-drenched islands of Malta, lies a sanctuary of a far more ancient kind. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni descends into the soft limestone, a multi-level labyrinth carved by hand over 1,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt were even conceived. This was no simple tomb or hiding place, but a vast subterranean temple complex dedicated to the mysteries of life, death, and what lies beyond. Its chambers are a profound architectural puzzle, with rooms meticulously carved to mirror the megalithic temples that stood above ground, a complete sacred world replicated deep within the earth. Here, the dead were laid to rest in collective burials, their bones intermingling in a powerful symbol of community that transcended individual lives. But this was also a space for the living, a place where rituals and ceremonies connected the people to the ancestors they revered. The most haunting feature of the Hypogeum is its acoustics. One particular chamber, known as the Oracle Room, possesses a remarkable property. A deep voice spoken in its center resonates through the entire complex, the sound vibrating through the very stone. You can easily imagine how this would have been used, a priestess's chant amplified into an otherworldly drone, her pronouncements seeming to emanate from the earth itself. This was not an accident of construction, it was acoustic engineering on a spiritual scale, designed to create awe and reinforce the authority of the ritual. Why go to such incredible lengths underground? Survival for this Neolithic society was not just about food and safety from enemies, it was about cultural survival. By creating this permanent, indestructible heart for their beliefs, they forged an unbreakable chain linking the living community to their past and their gods. In times of drought or famine, the stability offered by these shared rites, performed in this resonant underworld, would have been as crucial as any grain silo. The Hypogeum stands as a breathtaking reminder that the most resilient civilizations are those that bury their deepest beliefs as securely as they bury their dead. This ancient drive to seek power and protection from the earth itself finds a startling parallel in a network of tunnels built not for the dead, but for the most desperate of the living. Beneath the elegant arches of Edinburgh's South Bridge lies a hidden city of a different sort, one not of deliberate design but of desperate adaptation. When the bridge was completed in the late 18th century, a series of chambers was sealed within its stone foundations, intended for respectable merchants and tradesmen. But as the city above boomed and its streets grew crowded and costly, these vaults were abandoned by commerce and swiftly claimed by those with nowhere else to go. They became a secret world, a refuge for the poor, the criminal, and the utterly forgotten. In these dark, dripping chambers, life persisted against all odds. Families huddled in damp corners, cobblers set up illicit workshops, and unlicensed taverns, known as shebbeens, served alcohol long after hours, their patrons whispering in the perpetual gloom. This was resilience born not from careful planning, but from raw necessity. The very air was thick with the smell of damp stone and coal smoke, a far cry from the genteel society just a few feet overhead. How did people endure in such squalor? They adapted with a grim ingenuity, using every crack and alcove, creating a shadow economy that mirrored the one above yet operated by its own ruthless rules. The vaults became a physical archive of urban survival, their walls absorbing stories of hardship that would later fuel tales of ghostly hauntings. These spectral legends are perhaps just echoes of the very real human struggles that saturated the stone. This hidden layer did not just house people, it fundamentally shaped the city's identity, proving that a metropolis is not one story but many, stacked one upon the other. The vaults remind us that survival is not always a grand strategy, but often a simple, stubborn act of finding space in the cracks. This theme of the urban underground as a living, breathing entity finds its most dramatic expression on a far grander scale, in a city that moved an entire population beneath the earth to escape a threat of biblical proportions. Far beneath the peaceful countryside of Wieliczka, a secret city lay in wait. This was the Burlington Bunker, a sprawling underground complex designed for a single, chilling purpose: to ensure the British government would survive a nuclear war. Built in the 1950s at the height of the Cold War, this was not a shelter for the public, but a fortress for the state itself. Its tunnels stretched for miles, a hidden world equipped to house the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, and over 4,000 essential staff for up to 3 months. Within its reinforced concrete walls, you would find a complete parallel administration, from offices and communication centers to a full-scale broadcasting studio. From here, the government could issue orders and, most importantly, broadcast messages to the shell-shocked population above, a voice of authority meant to pierce through the static of a broken world. The bunker contained everything needed to sustain the machinery of state, including hospitals, laundries, and giant canteens stocked with enough food to last for weeks. Its own water supply and power generators made it a self-sufficient ark, sealed against the fallout. The sheer scale of this project reveals a profound national priority, the unflinching belief that for a society to endure, its leadership and institutions must be protected at almost any cost. This was the ultimate expression of top-down survival planning, where immense resources were dedicated to preserving the framework of governance itself. What does it say about a nation when it builds a hidden capital for its worst day? It speaks to a deep-seated drive for continuity, a determination that even in the face of annihilation, the structures of law and order would not simply vanish. This focus on preserving central authority underground stands in stark contrast to our next discovery, where survival was not managed from a command center, but was a collective act of an entire community seeking refuge as one. Just a few miles from the vast chambers of Derinkuyu, the Kaymaklı underground city presents a different vision of subterranean life. Its design is not one of sprawling levels but of dense, intimate connection. Here, narrow, low-ceilinged passages wind like arteries, linking a honeycomb of living quarters, storerooms, chapels, and even wineries, all clustered tightly around deep ventilation shafts that served as the city's lungs. This was a community built not just for hiding but for living together under immense pressure. The compact layout was a deliberate strategy. While it conserved energy and made defense easier, its true genius was social. By forcing interaction, the design prevented the isolation and despair that could cripple a community during long months of confinement. Shared kitchens, communal dining areas, and central courtyards carved around the air shafts became the heart of daily life, places where people could gather, talk, and maintain the rituals that made them who they were. You can almost hear the echoes of whispered prayers from a small church or the murmur of conversation in a common room, sounds that would have been as vital as fresh water. This intricate web of life required equally sophisticated support systems. Ingenious channels were cut into the floors to carry away waste, while the constant draft from the ventilation shaft swept stale air out, replacing it with clean, cool air from the surface. Large earthenware jars sunk into the floors of storerooms kept grain and olive oil safe from pests and at a stable temperature. How did thousands of people avoid conflict in such a compressed, stressful environment? The answer lay in a rigid social contract. Every person had a role and a responsibility, from maintaining the air shafts to guarding the stone doors. Strict rules governing noise, resource use, and movement would have been essential to prevent chaos. This was survival through cooperation, a powerful lesson that resilience is forged not just in strong walls, but in the strength of human bonds. This profound understanding of community as a survival tool finds a fascinating parallel in a place where the drive to survive was guided not by social rules, but by spiritual devotion. High on the Ethiopian plateau, a king's vision gave rise to a new Jerusalem carved not from stone, but directly into it. The 11 rock-hewn churches of Lalibela stand as monuments of faith so profound they defy simple explanation. In the 12th century, King Lalibela commanded the creation of this sacred complex, a pilgrimage site for Coptic Christians isolated by the spread of Islam. Each church was sculpted in a breathtakingly counterintuitive way, carved top-down from a single block of solid volcanic rock. Workers chiseled deep trenches to isolate a giant block, then hollowed it out from the inside, creating doors, windows, columns, and altars. The result is a hidden landscape of faith where the very earth has been made holy. The most iconic of these, the Church of St. George, is a perfect cross shape, standing in a deep, sheer-sided pit, accessible only by a narrow tunnel entrance. This was not merely architectural showmanship, it was a deliberate survival strategy. During periods of intense religious conflict, these sunken churches and the labyrinth of tunnels connecting them became a sanctuary. Pilgrims and priests could descend into the network and conduct their rituals in safety, the surrounding rock masking their presence and muffling their chants from any hostile forces above. Legends say that the construction was so immense it required divine assistance, with angels taking over the work each night after the human laborers retired. This blending of myth and masonry speaks to the project's psychological power. The belief that they were building with celestial help provided a spiritual fortitude to match their physical labor. Why pour generations of effort into such an endeavor? Because these churches were more than shelters, they were the unassailable heart of a culture. They provided a permanent, defensible space where a community's identity could not be erased. The complex hosted entire religious communities during times of danger, offering both physical protection and the profound psychological refuge that comes from practicing one's faith without fear. This fusion of deep belief and underground engineering created a resilience that lasted for centuries, proving that the most enduring sanctuaries protect the soul as fiercely as the body. This spiritual drive to secure both commerce and community underground finds its echo in a network that served a far more earthly, yet equally vital purpose. The concept of a hidden city sustaining a vibrant economy finds its perfect expression beneath the fields of northern France. Naours is not a natural cave system, but a vast network of tunnels originally quarried for limestone, its purpose transformed over centuries by the relentless pressures of conflict. By the Middle Ages, what began as a mine had evolved into a full-fledged subterranean village, a secret world capable of sheltering over 3,000 people along with their livestock and livelihoods. This was not a place of mere hiding, it was a functioning settlement operating in the shadows. Deep within the labyrinth, you would find not just sleeping quarters, but dedicated spaces for baking bread in communal ovens, forging tools in blacksmith shops, and even worshipping in quiet chapels carved from the stone. The true ingenuity of Naours was this seamless integration of defense and daily commerce. Stables housed cattle and sheep, their manure a vital resource for the farms above, while storage chambers were packed with grain and preserved food, enabling the community to wait out long sieges. How did they manage to light and ventilate such an extensive complex without revealing its location to passing armies? The answer lies in a system of cleverly disguised shafts. These narrow chimneys, often hidden among tree roots or within the foundations of surface buildings, drew fresh air down into the deepest chambers while also allowing smoke from fires to dissipate so thinly it became invisible against the sky. This minimal surface footprint was the key to its enduring secrecy. Centuries after its medieval peak, the tunnels of Naours offered shelter once again, this time to soldiers during the First World War. These men, far from home and trapped in the horrors of trench warfare, left their mark on the soft limestone walls, carving their names, regiments, and dates into the very same stone that had protected generations. This graffiti adds a poignant human layer to the site's long history, connecting the medieval struggle for survival to the modern one. Naours stands as powerful proof that the most successful refuges are those that allow a community to preserve not just their lives, but their entire way of life, proving that survival underground could be both dynamic and profoundly productive. In the scorching heart of the Australian outback, an entire town has retreated into the earth not for fear of enemies but from the relentless sun. Coober Pedy is a modern marvel of adaptation, where the search for opals carved out a new way of life. Prospectors digging for the precious gemstones discovered an immediate benefit. The underground spaces they created remained at a constant, comfortable temperature, while the surface world baked in heat that could soar past 120 degrees. What began as mine shafts were swiftly repurposed into homes known locally as dugouts. These are not crude holes in the ground, but fully furnished dwellings with living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms, all carved directly into the sandstone hills. The thermal mass of the rock acts as a natural insulator, keeping the interior around 77 degrees year-round without the need for air conditioning. This practical solution to an extreme climate has grown into a complete subterranean community. You can worship in an underground church, its serene arches hewn from the rock, sleep in a hotel room carved deep below the surface, and buy your groceries from a shop that stays cool all day. The entire town is a testament to a different kind of survival strategy, one driven not by conflict but by environmental necessity. Life here is a continuous exercise in innovation, using the very material excavated from the opal mines to build the walls of the homes, a perfect cycle of resourcefulness. What would drive a person to choose such a life? For many, it was the lure of opal wealth, but for those who stayed, it was the simple, profound comfort of a sustainable existence in an otherwise unforgiving landscape. Their resilience is born from a direct and pragmatic relationship with their environment, proving that survival blueprints are not static relics but living adaptations. This seamless blend of extraction and habitation, of taking from the earth while making a home within it, echoes a much older practice, one where the quest for a precious resource created a hidden world of immense scale and spiritual significance. The treasury of Petra is not merely a building, it is a mountain transformed. Its magnificent facade, intricately carved into the sheer face of rose-red sandstone, announces a civilization of immense power and artistry. But this iconic structure is a brilliant deception, a grand entrance that leads not to halls of gold, but to tombs and chambers carved deep within the cliff itself. The entire city of Petra was a secret capital, its location a masterstroke of strategic concealment. Tucked away in a remote desert canyon in Jordan, it was perfectly positioned to control the lucrative incense and spice trade routes that crisscrossed the Arabian Peninsula. Rival empires and bandits knew the trade caravans existed, but the Nabateans ensured they could never find the city that profited from them. This hidden fortress allowed them to tax the flow of wealth while protecting their own accumulated treasures from plunder. But a city cannot survive on secrecy alone in a desert. The Nabateans' true genius was not in hiding their city, but in making the barren landscape around it bloom. They were hydrological engineers without equal. In a land where rain was a rare and violent event, they built a complex network of underground channels, dams, and cisterns that captured every precious drop. They lined these water conduits with waterproof cement, channeling seasonal floods into vast underground reservoirs that could sustain their population of thousands through the driest years. This hidden circulatory system turned a seemingly inhospitable canyon into a thriving, self-sufficient hub. How did they keep such a city supplied and dominant for centuries? Their survival was a dual strategy of controlling the water and controlling the deals. They formed strategic alliances with nomadic tribes, creating a web of influence that stretched far beyond their canyon walls. The treasury itself, likely a ceremonial tomb for a king, embodies this fusion of commerce and culture. Its elaborate carvings are not just art, they are a statement of wealth and divine favor. a symbol of a civilization so secure in its hidden fortress that it could carve its identity directly into the living rock. Petra's story demonstrates that the most powerful underground strategies are those that secure not just safety, but the very resources that fuel economic supremacy. This mastery of trade and environment through concealment finds a fascinating parallel in a different kind of hidden network, one that moved not spices but people seeking freedom. The desert sun of Tunisia bakes the earth to a brittle crust, yet beneath the surface, life thrives in cool, quiet courtyards. This is Matmata, home to the Berber troglodyte dwellings, a stunning example of architecture born from pure environmental necessity. Here, homes are not built up but dug down. Families excavated vast central courtyards, some over 30 feet deep, and then carved their living quarters, bedrooms, kitchens, and storage rooms directly into the soft earth surrounding these sunken plazas. This ingenious pit design is a masterclass in passive climate control. The massive thermal mass of the surrounding ground absorbs the daytime heat, keeping the interior rooms remarkably cool during scorching summer days. In the winter, that same stored heat gently radiates back, warming the spaces against the chill of the desert night. It is a natural, energy-free system that has provided perfect comfort for centuries. But this design was about more than just temperature. The sunken courtyards, accessible only by a single, narrow tunnel, acted as a formidable first line of defense. They were hidden from view, protecting inhabitants from both the blinding fury of sandstorms and the threat of potential raiders. Life was intensely communal and integrated within these earthy walls. The interconnected rooms fostered close family bonds, while shared underground chambers housed valuable livestock, keeping them safe and their body heat contributing to the overall warmth of the dwelling. Other specialized rooms were used for preserving grains and olive oil in the stable, cool darkness. How has this way of life persisted for so many generations? The answer is a profound and sustainable logic. The Berbers did not fight their environment, they learned from it. Their building technique required no imported materials. It simply rearranged the earth that was already there, creating a home that was literally one with the landscape. This indigenous knowledge, passed from parent to child, represents a blueprint for ecological resilience that feels more relevant than ever. This deep harmony with a harsh climate finds its echo in a refuge born from a very different kind of environmental catastrophe, one of ice and volcanic fury. The same volcanic landscape that hid entire cities also offered solitude to those seeking a different kind of refuge. In the Göreme Valley, the soft rock was sculpted into a sanctuary for the soul. Here, Byzantine monks did not just carve rooms, they carved an entire monastic world, transforming the region's iconic ferry chimneys into churches, monasteries, and hermit cells. This was the Göreme Open Air Museum, a complex where spiritual retreat and strategic defense were one and the same. The monks sought isolation from the political and military chaos of the surface world, and they found it within these stone pillars. Their communities were entirely self-contained, with chapels for prayer, refectories for shared meals, and simple living quarters for contemplation, all interconnected by a web of narrow tunnels and staircases hidden from view. Entrances were camouflaged high on cliff faces or concealed behind seemingly solid rock walls, making the entire complex virtually invisible to anyone who did not know its secrets. This seclusion was their primary survival tool. It allowed them to protect not just their bodies, but their most precious treasures, meticulously copying religious texts and preserving liturgical practices through centuries of turmoil. The walls of their churches tell this story of unwavering faith. Vivid frescoes depicting scenes from the Bible cover the ceilings and arches, their colors still striking after hundreds of years. For a monk living in constant threat of invasion, these images were more than decoration. They were a daily reinforcement of their beliefs, a visual gospel that fortified their spirits in the dim underground light. How did such an isolated community sustain itself physically? The answer lies in the hidden valleys that cradled these rock spires. The monks cultivated small, secret gardens and orchards, their produce watered by cleverly channeled rainfall. They also maintained discreet trade relationships with sympathetic local villagers, exchanging crafted goods or spiritual guidance for essential supplies they could not produce themselves. This delicate balance of utter isolation and minimal external contact was the key to their endurance. Göreme stands as a powerful example of how withdrawal from the world can be an active survival strategy, a deliberate choice to create a protected space where culture and faith can continue uninterrupted. This monastic model of using the landscape as both fortress and sanctuary brings us back to the communal cities with a new perspective, showing how isolation and community are two sides of the same ancient coin of resilience. Beneath the vibrant port city of Odessa lies a darkness so vast it defies comprehension. This is the Odessa Catacombs, a sprawling labyrinth of tunnels stretching for over 1,500 miles, a hidden world born from the very stone used to build the city above. What began as limestone quarries in the 19th century evolved into a shadowy realm of resistance and survival, a maze so complex that even today, no single map can claim to capture its entirety. During the brutal occupation of World War II, these tunnels became the perfect base for Soviet partisans. From the silent darkness, they would emerge to sabotage supply lines, execute lightning-fast ambushes, and then vanish back into the earth, leaving their enemies confounded by an enemy they could not see or pin down. The catacombs were their ultimate strategic asset, a terrain that neutralized the occupiers' superior numbers and technology. But survival in this sunless world demanded more than just courage. It required an almost supernatural sense of direction. A single wrong turn in the uniform, damp passages could lead to a slow, terrifying death by dehydration and disorientation. Trust was the most precious currency down here. Partisans operated in tight, sealed cells, their lives dependent on the knowledge and loyalty of their comrades. This intricate knowledge of the maze became a form of power in itself, a skill passed secretly among those fighting for a common cause. In the decades that followed, the catacombs' roles shifted with the political tides. They became a conduit for a different kind of rebellion, hosting a thriving black market that moved everything from banned literature to blue jeans, proving that an illicit economy could flourish in the spaces official power could not reach. The catacombs of Odessa teach a stark lesson about urban resistance, that an intimate, unmappable familiarity with the terrain can become the great equalizer against any occupying force. This reliance on hidden urban networks to navigate earthly conflicts finds a profound contrast in our next discovery, where an ancient civilization looked not to the earth, but to the heavens, building an underground world to survive a threat written in the stars. Deep within the Peruvian Andes, the stone heart of Chavín de Huántar holds a different kind of power. Here, survival was not measured in stockpiled grain or fortified doors, but in the control of the human mind. This ceremonial complex, dating back over 3,000 years, was a spiritual engine built entirely underground, a labyrinth of galleries where priests orchestrated experiences that blurred the line between the earthly and the divine. The true genius of Chavín was not just in its hidden chambers, but in its mastery of sound. The architects designed the entire complex as a giant acoustic instrument. When a priest blew a conch shell trumpet known as a pututu, the sound would not simply echo, it would transform. It traveled through precisely angled stone ducts and channels, its tone warping into an unearthly roar that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Imagine being a pilgrim in that darkened corridor, hearing a voice that was not quite human, a sound that felt like the mountain itself was speaking. This was no accident. It was psychological engineering on a grand scale, a calculated use of disorientation to generate awe and reinforce the authority of the religious elite. The manipulation did not stop with sound. Ingenious water channels were routed through the tunnels, their constant, rushing murmur providing a sonic backdrop that masked other noises and deepened the sense of an alien, living environment. How could ancient builders achieve such precise acoustic effects without any modern technology? The answer lies in generations of observation and refinement. They learned through trial and error how sound waves behaved in their specific stone chambers, carving and adjusting angles over centuries to create the perfect resonant frequencies. This sacred science was central to their survival strategy. By aligning the entire complex with celestial events like the solstices, they linked their authority to the unchangeable cycles of the cosmos. A shaft of light would pierce the darkness on a specific day, illuminating a central idol, an event that seemed like a direct conversation with the gods, orchestrated by the priests. This gave the community a shared calendar for planting and harvest, but more importantly, it provided a profound sense of order in a chaotic world. Chavín de Huántar demonstrates that the most potent survival tool can be belief itself, meticulously crafted and amplified from the depths of the earth. The psychological labyrinths of Chavín de Huántar give way to a completely different kind of underground world, one built not for spiritual awe but for daily convenience. Montreal's réseau, often called the Underground City, is a sprawling network that feels less like a hidden fortress and more like a second downtown. This is a modern marvel of urban integration, a labyrinth of brightly lit tunnels connecting shopping centers, office towers, universities, and metro stations. Its primary purpose is simple yet transformative: to allow the daily life of a major metropolis to flow seamlessly during the brutal Canadian winters. For months each year, when the surface is gripped by sub-zero temperatures and heavy snow, a parallel city thrives below. You can commute to work, buy groceries, eat at a restaurant, and even watch a movie, all without ever needing a heavy coat. This network is punctuated by public plazas and art installations, creating a vibrant, climate-controlled alternative to the streets above. Its development was driven by pure practicality, a solution to the economic drain of harsh weather. But its impact is profoundly social. The réseau provides an accessible, inclusive environment where the elderly, the young, and those with mobility challenges can remain active and engaged in the city's life year-round. How does such a massive subterranean space affect the sustainability of the city above? By concentrating activity and reducing the need for people to travel between scattered, heated buildings, it significantly cuts down on overall energy consumption. It promotes walking and the use of public transit, creating a more efficient urban metabolism. This represents a fundamental shift in the purpose of going underground, moving from a reactive strategy for survival against immediate threats to a proactive design for long-term comfort, efficiency, and community resilience. The réseau proves that the most advanced underground strategies are those that enhance our quality of life, not just protect it. This modern vision of a subterranean public square finds a startlingly similar blueprint in a much older city, where ancient planners also understood the value of bringing daily life beneath the surface. The cool, dark cellars beneath Pilsen's cobblestone streets held the city's lifeblood. This was not a single tunnel but a sprawling, multi-level labyrinth, a hidden twin to the vibrant medieval city above. Here in the constant, cool earth, residents perfected the art of preservation, storing not just food and valuables, but the very product that would make the city famous for centuries: beer. The underground network was a masterpiece of practical engineering, its temperature and humidity perfectly stable, creating the ideal environment for fermenting and aging lager. This natural refrigeration was the bedrock of Pilsen's brewing industry, a competitive advantage so powerful it was literally built into the city's foundations. But these cellars were far more than just industrial storage. They were a key component of the city's defense, a secret world that activated in times of siege. When invaders threatened the walls above, the population could withdraw below, taking shelter in the very chambers that held their provisions. Narrow, hidden passages snaked away from the main cellars, some leading discreetly beyond the city's fortifications, allowing for covert movement, the dispatch of messengers, or even surprise counterattacks. This dual purpose was the network's true genius. It supported the city's daily economic engine while simultaneously serving as its emergency backup system. Why would a community invest so heavily in digging out such an extensive underworld? Because it offered a complete package of resilience. The tunnels guaranteed that Pilsen could protect its wealth, sustain its people, and maintain its most profitable trade during a conflict, making it a far more formidable and enduring hub in the region. This deep connection between past and present is palpable today, as many of these very same cellars are still used by modern breweries to age their famous Pilsner lagers, a living tradition that ties contemporary craftsmanship to ancient survival logic. This seamless blend of industry and refuge finds a fascinating parallel in a place where the drive to extract a precious resource created a hidden world of immense scale and spiritual significance. Descending into Rani Kai Vav is like walking into an inverted temple where every step down brings you closer to both water and wonder. This magnificent stepwell in India, built in the 11th century, transforms a simple, life-sustaining function into a breathtaking architectural masterpiece. It plunges down several stories, a grand staircase flanked by more than 1,500 intricate carvings. Each panel tells a story depicting deities, mythological scenes, and celestial nymphs, turning the walls into a sacred text carved in stone. This was never just a place to collect water. It was a cool, ornate sanctuary from the blistering heat, a subterranean community center where people gathered to socialize, pray, and simply exist in a space of profound beauty. The engineering behind this marvel was as sophisticated as its art. Builders had to dig deep to reliably tap into the groundwater table, creating a stable source that would not fail during long droughts. The entire structure was designed to combat evaporation, with the water reservoir kept in the deepest, coolest part of the complex, preserving every precious drop for the dry seasons. How did a society maintain such an elaborate public work for centuries? The answer lies in a culture that viewed infrastructure as a sacred trust. Royal patronage funded the initial construction, a queen's gift to her people, but its ongoing upkeep was a communal responsibility. Local communities took pride in these stepwells, cleaning the steps, maintaining the carvings, and ensuring they remained vibrant centers of daily life. They were valued not as mere utilities, but as essential public assets that nourished both the body and the spirit. Rani Kai Vav stands as a powerful testament to a holistic vision of survival, where meeting a basic human need was seamlessly woven together with artistic expression and social cohesion. This beautiful integration of purpose finds a stark yet equally brilliant contrast in a network of tunnels designed not for community, but for the covert movement of an entire army. Rising from the sea just off the coast of Nafplio, the Bourtzi Fortress commands the horizon from its solitary rocky islet. This compact Venetian stronghold, though not buried, was a masterclass in using geography as a cloak. Its isolated position transformed a small island into an unsinkable warship, a permanent sentinel guarding the only sea approach to the city. From its battlements, lookouts had an unobstructed view for miles, ensuring no enemy vessel could slip through unnoticed. The fortress did not just watch, it acted. A chain could be stretched from its base to the mainland, physically blocking the harbor entrance and trapping hostile fleets in a deadly crossfire. But the true secret to its endurance lay below the stone towers. Hidden chambers carved into the living rock of the islet served as storerooms for provisions and barracks for the garrison. These underground spaces allowed a small force to hold out for months, turning the fortress into a self-sufficient thorn in the side of any besieging navy. Its history is a chronicle of adaptation, passing from Venetian to Ottoman to Greek control, with each new ruler reinforcing its walls and repurposing its dungeons, a testament to the structure's enduring strategic value. What makes such an island fortress so uniquely effective? It forces an attacker to fight on two fronts simultaneously, against the fortifications themselves and against the unforgiving sea. Any assault becomes a complex, vulnerable amphibious operation, giving the defenders a monumental advantage. The Bourtzi story demonstrates that the principles of concealment and control are not confined to deep tunnels, but can be achieved by a clever, unassailable position. This return to the power of geography seamlessly connects the maritime stronghold to the much older, deeper refuges carved from the Anatolian plateau. The true genius of Cappadocia's underground world was not in any single city, but in the connections between them. Across the entire region, isolated marvels like Derinkuyu and Kaymaklı were not standalone fortresses, but nodes in a vast subterranean web of refuge. Secret tunnels, some stretching for miles, linked these urban centers, creating a regional escape route of breathtaking sophistication. This network transformed a collection of strongholds into a single, fluid defense system. If one city was compromised or its supplies ran low, the entire population could execute a coordinated retreat, moving through the sealed passageways to the safety of the next bastion. The tunnels themselves were engineered for control, with massive stone doors positioned at strategic intervals. These could be rolled shut to seal off compromised sections, allowing defenders to compartmentalize the threat and protect the greater network. This was not a single plan for survival, but a flexible, multi-layered strategy that could adapt to anything from a small raiding party to a full-scale invasion. The very existence of such an integrated system points to a society capable of remarkable collective action. How did they manage the logistics of such a complex endeavor? Coordination would have required designated leaders in each city, individuals entrusted with the authority to order a retreat. Prearranged signals, perhaps relayed through the ventilation shafts using coded sounds or lights, would have been essential for communication across the silent distances. The entire network functioned on shared resources and a common understanding of the protocols, a social contract carved into the bedrock itself. This collaborative spirit was built over generations. Archaeologists believe these cities were used and expanded by a succession of civilizations, from the ancient Hittites to the early Christians, with each group adding its own layer of tunnels and chambers to the existing blueprint. This long-term, regional approach to survival offered a resilience that no single city could ever achieve alone. The ability to fall back, to have another secure location waiting, eliminated the desperation of a last stand. It ensured that a culture could live to see another day, not just by hiding, but by having an entire underworld to call home. This principle of interconnected strength, where collaboration becomes the ultimate survival tool, finds its final and most profound expression in our last discovery. Beneath the quiet streets of Moose Jaw, a different kind of survival played out in the damp, narrow passages that snaked between the basements of legitimate businesses. These tunnels were not carved from ancient rock, but from the soft clay of social necessity, serving as a hidden stage for two very different struggles. During the era of Prohibition, they became the lifeblood of a thriving bootlegging operation. Smugglers moved cases of illicit alcohol through the darkness, their activities shielded from the authorities above. The legends are persistent, whispering that the infamous gangster Al Capone himself used this clandestine network to run whiskey south into the thirsty United States, his presence a ghost in the machine of this underground economy. Yet at the very same time, these same tunnels offered a more poignant form of refuge. They became temporary homes for Chinese immigrants who faced severe discrimination and exclusionary laws. For these men, the tunnels were not a place for crime, but a sanctuary from prejudice, offering a roof, however humble, and a fragile sense of community away from the hostile world above. They carved out living quarters with basic beds and small cooking areas, creating habitable spaces in the secrecy of the earth. How could such a dual existence flourish right under the town's nose? The answer lies in a complicated social contract. The tunnels met needs the surface world would not, providing economic opportunity for some and basic shelter for others. This created a blind eye, a silent agreement that these gray areas of survival were, for a time, a necessary part of the community's fabric. The Moose Jaw tunnels reveal that the drive to go underground is not always about evading an army, but about finding a space to simply exist when the world above offers none. These hidden passages, built for secrecy and survival on the margins, complete our journey through the underworld, forcing us to ask what all these structures, from the grandest cities to the humblest hideouts, ultimately tell us about the human spirit. 23 hidden worlds, each a unique answer to an existential threat, now form a single, powerful mosaic of human resilience. The patterns that emerge are as clear as they are profound. Across continents and centuries, from the rock-hewn cities of Cappadocia to the atomic bunkers of Beijing, three universal priorities consistently drove societies underground. The first was the non-negotiable need for water security. Whether it was the Nabateans channeling flash floods into hidden cisterns at Petra, or the Etruscans of Orvieto tapping deep aquifers, every civilization understood that controlling water meant controlling their own destiny. The second was the imperative of communal organization. Survival was never a solitary act. In the honeycombed halls of Kaymaklı, social bonds were as vital as ventilation shafts, while in the wartime tunnels of Coober, unwavering trust was the only currency that mattered. The third driving force was a deep-seated need for cultural and spiritual continuity. The resonant chambers of Malta's Hypogeum and the sunken churches of Lalibela were not just shelters for bodies, but fortresses for faith, ensuring that a people's identity could outlast any surface-level conflict. While the core needs were universal, the strategies themselves were beautifully diverse, each tailored to a specific kind of pressure. Some civilizations, like the builders of Derinkuyu, focused overwhelmingly on defense, creating impregnable fortresses with rolling stone doors and compartmentalized tunnels. Others, like the monks of Göreme, prioritized spiritual retreat, using seclusion as their primary shield. And then there were those, like the merchants of Pilsen, who seamlessly blended commerce with refuge, ensuring their economic engine could keep running even when the city above was under siege. This diversity reveals a crucial lesson. There is no single blueprint for resilience. Instead, true endurance comes from a society's ability to diagnose its most pressing vulnerability and innovate a solution that protects not just its people, but its entire way of life. The common thread is not the specific design, but the underlying ingenuity that each design represents. So what do these ancient and not so ancient blueprints mean for us today? They are far more than historical curiosities. They are a masterclass in preparedness, teaching us that resilience is not built in a crisis, but long before it arrives. Our ancestors invested generations in carving out their safeguards. In a modern world facing the slow-motion siege of climate change and the persistent risk of geopolitical instability, their example is a powerful call to action. We may not need to carve new cities from rock, but we must invest with the same foresight in adaptable infrastructure, in robust water and food systems, and in the social cohesion that holds a community together when everything else falls apart. The greatest lesson whispered from these depths is that our most vital resource has always been each other. The stone doors, the hidden cisterns, and the sacred chambers were all just tools. The real survival strategy was the collective will to use them, a lesson as essential now as it was 2,000 years ago. These 23 stories form a single, powerful mosaic of human resilience. The patterns that emerge are as clear as they are profound. Across continents and centuries, from the rock-hewn cities of Cappadocia to the atomic bunkers of Beijing, three universal priorities consistently drove societies underground. The first was the non-negotiable need for water security. Whether it was the Nabateans channeling flash floods into hidden cisterns at Petra, or the Etruscans of Orvieto tapping deep aquifers, every civilization understood that controlling water meant controlling their own destiny. The second was the imperative of communal organization. Survival was never a solitary act. In the honeycombed halls of Kaymaklı, social bonds were as vital as ventilation shafts, while in the wartime tunnels of Coober, unwavering trust was the only currency that mattered. The third driving force was a deep-seated need for cultural and spiritual continuity. The resonant chambers of Malta's Hypogeum and the sunken churches of Lalibela were not just shelters for bodies, but fortresses for faith, ensuring that a people's identity could outlast any surface-level conflict. While the core needs were universal, the strategies themselves were beautifully diverse, each tailored to a specific kind of pressure. Some civilizations, like the builders of Derinkuyu, focused overwhelmingly on defense, creating impregnable fortresses with rolling stone doors and compartmentalized tunnels. Others, like the monks of Göreme, prioritized spiritual retreat, using seclusion as their primary shield. And then there were those, like the merchants of Pilsen, who seamlessly blended commerce with refuge, ensuring their economic engine could keep running even when the city above was under siege. This diversity reveals a crucial lesson. There is no single blueprint for resilience. Instead, true endurance comes from a society's ability to diagnose its most pressing vulnerability and innovate a solution that protects not just its people, but its entire way of life. The common thread is not the specific design, but the underlying ingenuity that each design represents. So what do these ancient and not so ancient blueprints mean for us today? They are far more than historical curiosities. They are a masterclass in preparedness, teaching us that resilience is not built in a crisis, but long before it arrives. Our ancestors invested generations in carving out their safeguards. In a modern world facing the slow-motion siege of climate change and the persistent risk of geopolitical instability, their example is a powerful call to action. We may not need to carve new cities from rock, but we must invest with the same foresight in adaptable infrastructure, in robust water and food systems, and in the social cohesion that holds a community together when everything else falls apart. The greatest lesson whispered from these depths is that our most vital resource has always been each other. The stone doors, the hidden cisterns, and the sacred chambers were all just tools. The real survival strategy was the collective will to use them, a lesson as essential now as it was 2,000 years ago. If this journey through hidden worlds has inspired you, please subscribe for more explorations into the forgotten corners of our past. Let us know in the comments which of these 23 structures captured your imagination the most, and thank you for joining me on this incredible descent into the strategies that saved civilizations.